Sorry, that's what I'm asking about.
Yeah.
Especially when the colleague can't work with you. Tips for you.
Well, not really. Yeah, definitely.
Yeah. Spice, you know, what's that much? Need that really to give me
Good evening, it's 6:30 and welcome to the Housing Committee meeting of the 17th of June 2026. The first item on the agenda is the election of a chair for the municipal year. Can I please request nominations for chair of the committee?
Andrea Spice.
Okay, any seconder? That's all good. Okay, are there any other nominations? Then I duly elect Councillor Spice as chair of the committee for the ensuing year. I'd like to take the place.
Thanks everybody for that. Really appreciate it. I'm looking forward to a new year. Just briefly, we've had a few changes around portfolios just to make visitors aware that I am the portfolio holder for housing now as well. So welcome everybody this evening. So item 2 on the agenda is the appointment of a vice chair. Do we have any nominations?
So nominate Councillor Walker.
I'll second it.
There you go, Councillor Walker. Thank you very much. So item 3 on the agenda is to receive any apologies for absence. Thank you to everybody for attending. We do not have any apologies. So moving swiftly on, I will go to item 4, questions of the members of public and members of the council. So I'd like to start with members from the public, but we have had some sent in, and thank you for those that have sent their questions in advance, whether you're online and not here or whether you're here in person. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to ask Chanel to read out the questions that have been sent in by the resident who is not here, and we will answer those, and then we will come to the room.
Who is responsible for funding and grant applications in relation to housing? Is there a dedicated fundraising role within the service of the organisation? The reason I ask is whether a cost benefit or cost analysis exercise would be worthwhile in this area.
Thank you for that. And I'm going to pass over to Anna to answer the question. Thank you.
A new post was created for the service in February 2026, specifically to keep abreast of grant streams that are available and monitor or commissioned third-party spend that's derived from grants. It's worth noting that opportunities to access some grant funds are limited for us as a non-stock holding local authority without a housing revenue account. But I would like to extend an invitation to a follow-up meeting if there are specific grant funding suggestions we can pursue. To Sean.
Not here.
She's not here.
Watch her online and yeah, recording. Thank you for that. Thank you for that offer.
Agenda item 7, brief section 2.7. Can more details be given about antisocial behaviour being stated as a reason for eviction from supported accommodation? Does this specifically mean antisocial behaviour, or does it refer more broadly to breaking rules within accommodation, which could cover a wider set of issues?
The data in this rough sleeper report context specifically refers to the cohort that accessed the winter night shelter. So it's not all evictions from supported housing, it's specifically that cohort. And it just documents where reasons for homelessness from supported settings were recorded as antisocial behaviour as quite a significant category, and that's in Appendix 7. So that would include antisocial behaviours such as property damage, aggressive or threatening behaviour. It's worth noting that wider data sets on eviction from supported accommodation are published nationally and would include a range of causes of homelessness.
Thank you, Anna.
Agenda item 7, briefing section 3.5. When you refer to assertive outreach, does this include the verification of rough sleepers? My understanding is that the Ministry of Housing, Communities and Local Government, through its National Plan to End Homelessness, has encouraged local authorities to move away from verification. Homeless Link's findings report on a verification also state some people felt that using verification as a method of gatekeeping access to rough sleeping services ultimately begins the support journey for a place of distrust, which can be hugely damaging to individuals trying to access services. How does the current approach align with the national direction of travel away from verification?
Since early to the middle of 2025, there is no longer a verification of rough sleepers for our services. We do take a believing trust-based approach. The only exception to that is for the annual account, where the national guidance still requires us to see a person bedded down. So assertive outreach means proactively seeking individuals to ensure support is offered, rather than a reactive model which waits on their approach to us. Prior to the change in mid-2025, MHCL guidance recommended verification, so this represents a shift in national strategy which we have aligned to.
Thank you.
Thanks.
I understand that from September, the outreach service may be brought in-house rather than continuing through SMART. Could the council clarify how the in-house outreach service will work in practice, particularly when someone identified as rough sleeping asks for help with their housing or is verified? Will that be treated as legal homelessness application, or will the person still need to make a separate application directly to the council? I ask because if verification is not treated as a homelessness application, there is a risk that this could unintentionally create more barriers and hoops for people who are already in a very difficult situation. It could mean someone having to move through several extra steps, such as the 17 shared night beds, before being considered for temporary accommodation or other support they might be legally entitled to. I would also like to understand whether the council intends to use rough sleeper verification within the new in-house model, and how this will sit alongside the holistic person-centred approach described in the brief.
So any in-house services will continue as described in the previous answer, so there will not be a verification process of rough sleeping required to access our services. All cases are picked up now, and whatever model we move to in the future, for a full statutory assessment as per the legal requirements. So if a customer approaches the mainstream team at the hub, then a statutory assessment is completed before referring into rough sleeper services if that risk is identified. If a customer is identified by the outreach team, they should refer into the mainstream team for the statutory assessment. Therefore, the referral pathway currently ensures legal duties are met and will continue to do so. We're aiming to strengthen the pace and reduce the pillar-to-post effect of any perceived barriers for customers in the new model. Where the low threshold for Section 188 is met, then temporary accommodation provision will, of course, be made.
Thank you. What is the position of each political group represented on the committee regarding the practice of rough sleeper verifications?
Thank you. I will take this one. Not wishing to ask officers to answer a political question, but I'd like to say that in keeping with MHCLG's and the Ministry of Housing, Communities and Local Government guidance, we as the council will not recommend verification.
Thank you. Agenda item 7, briefing section 4.2. Of the 85 people who accessed the service, 32 moved into accommodation. Can you provide a breakdown of the types of accommodation secured? For example, social housing, private rental sector, supported housing, temporary accommodation, or other options? How many homelessness applications were made from 85 individuals who accessed the service?
We would like to provide a written response to this one to drill down into the data a bit further detail, and there may be some manual checks needed to verify the numbers. Responding right into that one.
Fabulous, thank you. And you've got the contact details. That's amazing, lovely. Next question, please.
Agenda item 7, briefing section 5.3. This sounds extremely positive, and I am looking forward to hearing more about it. I'm particularly pleased that lived experience is being considered through a separate dedicated point in this briefing. Linked to this, agenda item 8, section 4.3, refers to forums for various housing sectors. Do these forums include residents and peoples with lived experience? If not, are there plans to include them in the future?
Thank you, Anna.
The forums don't currently include voices of lived experience. However, the intention is to build this into the future.
Fabulous. Thank you, Anna. My understanding is that's the last question that's sent in. Okay, perfect. So we are going to go to the floor now for people that are in the room. So I would like to invite John Allen. Is John here? Hello.
Hi. In an email to the Bedford Homeless Partnership, the Head of Housing, Homelessness and Customer Services, when describing an introduction to the early help housing team, stated, "We are introducing a much needed early help housing team to the service to be launched this summer. This team will work ahead of the statutory triggers for intervention to provide additional help to customers, increase early interventions and homeless prevention work. We would welcome suggestions on closer working with any of your organisations through this team to provide customer support for those at risk of homelessness. Once recruited, I will share with pathways forward." So can the Head of Housing, Homelessness and Customer Services describe what working ahead of the statutory triggers means, please, as it is difficult to avoid a trigger to a Part 7 application if a person is presented as homeless under the legal definition and has asked for assistance?
Yeah, the first point is that this is a proactive outreach rather than waiting for them to approach. But the Governmental Homelessness Code of Guidance provides a statutory definition for threatened with homelessness, and I'm quoting, "If a person is likely to become homeless within 56 days, including where a valid notice under the Housing Act 1988 has been issued in respect of the only accommodation available for the person's occupation, and that notice will expire within 56 days. So the creation of an early help team is intended to proactively identify early opportunities to help households that may be at risk of homelessness before the 56 days and prevent homelessness in crisis from escalating."
Thank you, Anna. Thank you, John, for coming to ask your question. Mike, can I pass the call to you, please?
Yeah, sure. So I recently accompanied someone to the homeless assessment in the council's customer service centre. The centre is open plan. In the course of the assessment, was sat a couple of feet away from the person in the next booth. I could hear every word, a single word from their conversation, both the officers and the member of the public, which involved sharing various kinds of highly sensitive information. There are many positives in the council's draft domestic abuse policy, but as I understand it, the council is going to continue to use the open plan space for interviews of survivors. Could each councillor answer yes or no to the following two questions? One, are you satisfied this setup complies with the Data Protection Act 2018? And two, are you satisfied that asking such highly sensitive questions in this setting is trauma informed?
Thank you for your question. I'd like to refer you to responses to questions on interview rooms and data protection from the 13th of November 24 and the 11th of June 25 on this matter. And to clarify specifically that the draft domestic abuse policy does set out the offer of interview rooms for assessment purposes, which also works towards a trauma-informed approach.
Can I just have a follow-up question then? Is it possible to get an answer from each individual councillor? Is that the view of every councillor here?
Can I answer if you wish to? Yes, of course. Please do.
Why is that policy not being enforced?
Why is the policy not being enforced?
Yeah.
What? Anna, would you like to? I'm sorry, I'm not passing it and not answering. It's just being a week into the.
No, that's fine. It's just a question I have.
Yeah,
If
no.
that is the policy that we agreed in 2024, why is it not being enforced?
The policy referred to in this question is a draft domestic abuse policy, which we've newly pulled together, which sets out standards specifically for that cohort and how we respond to domestic abuse. The principle of offering an interview room for sensitive cases has always been there in the team. I've put it explicitly into that domestic abuse policy, which is yet to be published, but the offer of interview rooms is available now for those that request it. I'd love to be able to have every single housing assessment in an interview room as the perfect ideal solution, but I only have 3 interview rooms available, so it is on an off basis, but we will prioritise cases that are sensitive. And if there are individual cases where that is not happening and it's an issue, please use the complaints process and I'll set that up individually.
Yeah, can I ask a question? So if a member of staff realises that this person could be under stress and it's traumatic, and if they feel that the information they're asking could be potentially detrimental to that person, do the staff not offer or activate?
They should be proactively offering and moving into an interview room space. If it's not available, they can rebook the appointment for a time that is available, because it's a very obviously limited resource. But in some cases, the situation might be very urgent and they need to resolve the situation in that moment with the customer. So it's quite challenging on the ground to manage. But staff know they should be doing that, which is why I say if there are individual cases where that's not happened, then I can investigate that through the complaints process. But this isn't the forum for individual complaint cases as such.
Thank you. Oh, we're trying to do a follow up and then we'll jump into Christina to follow up before.
So is it possible from whatever committee to just send a reminder out to remind staff? Because I know we're in a housing committee and I know it's Bedford Borough Council, but this is happening in other establishments. So I think it's something that needs to be highlighted and talked about. And I think just a little reminder to staff that if they pick up before the person needs to ask, it would be good for us, good practice to perhaps offer that facility before needing to be asked. So thanks for that.
Thank you for that, Councillor. You okay?
Yeah, absolutely. That's an action I'll take away.
Lovely, thank you. Sorry, Councillor.
I think it is a breach of data protection and it's not confidential for the resident, and it puts them in quite a tricky position if a room is not available. Could I ask the executive committee members of this committee to give Anna and her team more resources in terms of rooms? She only has 3 rooms available to interview people for homelessness, and that is shocking. So can I ask the executive members of this committee to agree tonight that Anna will be given more rooms when we've got a massive building like this to see residents about homelessness?
I think you would understand the situation that we can't just agree to something today when we haven't looked at any possibilities. But what we can do is take it away and certainly look at any opportunities that we can to do that. Councillor.
Thank you, Chair. In answer to your question about yes or no, I've not observed this, so I don't know. My first day on the housing committee. You're absolutely right. There should be absolute privacy when somebody's been interviewed. It's a very stressful situation. I agree with that. It's up to us as an executive now to make sure that the housing team have those facilities available. It might be difficult, but it's something that we need to do.
Just to say that I was very much aware that those private rooms. Question was, are we aware of it? Yes, we are aware of it. Private rooms to be used for special occasions. Private occasions, I should say.
Private occasions.
I was just going to say that obviously, say you have too many people coming in and there's a whole load of people in the room, they need to be assessed. So when you assess them in the first instance, you know what kind of help they need. Would you automatically book the room for them, or how does it all work? You know that obviously with the trauma informed service, does it you'd be breaching the Data Protection Act if you didn't do, well, obviously the gentleman is saying, because you need to have separate rooms. Do you have like screens or anything? Because I've not seen the assessment process. Okay. What is actually the process? Sorry.
Okay, Anna, can I ask you to go through the process?
Yeah, so it depends. If a customer calls the call centre, the initial gathering of information happens through the customer service team over the phone, which is obviously a private scenario, and they will book into the appointment diary to see the housing options officer. If the customer is homeless on the day or at risk of homeless on the day, it will be an on the day appointment. Otherwise, we have a target of being booked in within 5 days. Now, they are booked in to a desk in the open plan area, usually, because we need to see between 6 and 10 customers a day. And the assessment period is usually 2 to 3 hours, it can be depending on the case. So at that point, the housing options officer will review the notes on the case. If there are obvious sensitivities and, or if the customer seems distressed, they can, of course, use an interview room or rebook that appointment for another time. What I'm trying to balance here is that ideal scenario of having that private confidential space with not wanting to delay outcomes or risk missing a temporary accommodation need that day by delaying an appointment. I don't think we would meet the 5-day turnaround time even for non-emergencies, let alone seeing everybody on the day, if I was reliant on only seeing people in the rooms.
Thank you, Anna. Sorry, Councillor, just to beg, you can pop into the customer service centre anytime you want. Either let Anna know if you want to go with her or one of the team, or it's just open. You know, the receptionist there is, or what do you call a receptionist? The welcome desk is very welcoming.
But it's worth saying what we have tried to do is we have put some screens between desks where there are less than, if it's not fully occupied, we will make sure that we're not seeing people side by side. There is some distance between the waiting room chairs and the desk. So we've done everything that we can within that space to protect data and protect privacy. That's all.
Thank you. Thank you. And Councillor White.
So it's more of a comment, actually.
Okay.
So it's just a comment that in those situations, unless you're living this, we can't express how this person is. So I can understand that you've got to make a quick decision to perhaps house that person. But weighing that up with the potential risk that somebody could be in there, anyone could be in that hub, and we could be opening that person to further abuse. Because we don't know who that person knows. If that person knows somebody who's the perpetrator, I just feel that, yeah, it's. I know you've got a really difficult job, and it is weighing it up with that person that's living that experience, and the rules and the stuff don't work because you can talk about anything and you can hear everything. So I just think we need to be really careful between trying to give a service and the potential harm that we could cause by not following up. And I know you're in a really difficult position, and councillors, but just, you know, that person in that position is also needing help, and the right help in the right context, sort of thing.
I think we can take away an action to meet with property services and discuss options.
Yeah, and like Councillor Actor, I would like, if your invitation is there, I would also like to go down to the hub and perhaps meet the staff and just have a look at the services and, you know.
You're always welcome to visit.
Yeah, that'd be really good.
Fabulous. Thank you. Thank you for that. Councillor Rowan, do you have anything you'd like to?
I agree with what Annette.
We've been working on this.
Oh, okay.
To answer the questions.
Okay, perfect.
Can I just say, from the other side, I have been with people who have had those sort of help, and sometimes they do go above and beyond and help. So I'm not saying everyone doesn't get in everyone. I'm just telling you from my own experience.
Amazing.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you for that positive feedback. So, did you have?
I'll give one more follow-up comment on that one.
Okay.
Thanks. So I could say a lot more about this, but it's really positive just to hear that kind of response. I think if that is sorted, I'm not going to keep going on about it in meetings, but as I say, we go on forward to. Should I go to my next question?
You can go, yeah.
Cool, thanks. So quick one. In the March Housing Committee, I asked, do any of the councillors who are landlords make use of any council scheme, for example, the rent deposit scheme, to let, manage, monitor, do business relating to their properties? I don't think I've received an answer to this question yet. When the council does respond, could the response refer to the Housing Committee membership at the time the question was asked?
Okay, thank you for that. My understanding, as with all processes that we have, that any declarations of interest are already published on the council's website. We have to declare all our interests as part of our council membership.
That doesn't really answer my question. Is the answer definitely no then? So none of the landlords at the time then were doing any business with the rent deposit scheme?
I can't answer for people that weren't here. I'm honest with you.
Okay, but that's the question I'm asking.
It passed off. Right.
It was no, you weren't here when he asked.
Oh, okay. Oh, sorry, I was here.
Oh, you were here. Oh, okay. Sorry.
So can I just say, from my point of view, I didn't reply because I'm not a landlord or I don't own any property. So an apology, I should have replied to you and said that I'm not.
Oh, no, I was just expecting a single response. It wasn't,
okay, right. So yeah, I was going to say, because I haven't got anything to declare. No.
I was going to say, I think I recall from the evening, some councillors did answer that question at that committee. Councillor Spicer's correct. Declarations of interest are published and they're there and they're for councillors to declare themselves. I'll talk to the monitoring officer and see if there is a collective response that we could give in this circumstance. Okay.
Yeah, that's good, thanks.
Okay, fabulous. Do you have any further questions? No? Okay,
Good, thanks.
thank you both so much for coming.
Throw one in glue.
Really, really appreciate that. Have a lovely weekend. So I believe we have a question from Simon as chair of. Oh, sorry, looking us like where we're going. If you would like to ask your question, please.
Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. Simon Daines. I'm Chair of Trustees for Smart CJS. As you know, we currently hold the contracts from the council for the homelessness services. Those contracts are coming to an end. And I'm very grateful to you for letting me come and speak to you. My printer's packed up, so I'm afraid I'm going to be peering at my phone to try and make sense of tiny type. I've had to take a photograph of my screen. There is a preamble to these questions, or this question, which is in several parts, so please bear with me. I shall be as brief as I possibly can be. I was appointed as chair just over a year ago, and under my chairmanship, we appointed a new CEO and restructured the senior leadership team of the charity. And I was appointed not least because I am a fundraising specialist, and my particular interest is in fundraising for the charity. This is with reference to the proposal, or possibly the policy. I'm not quite sure what stage it's got to. There's no subtext to that. I don't know where we are because I'm not quite sure I understand everything yet. So perhaps you can help me with this. This is with reference to the proposal or the policy to bring all services in-house. The CEO of Smart and I yesterday met with Ms. Anna Rabani and with Ms. Jen Robus. Jen was at one stage our CEO, and when I started as a trustee before my time as chair, we had a very happy working relationship, and we've always had a good working relationship as a charity with the council, and we would like that to continue. In our meeting yesterday, Anna commented that we can't manage, this is what was said, we can't manage homelessness and rough sleeping without the third sector, and we want to continue continue working with you. I very much regret to inform the Housing Committee that that will almost certainly be impossible, because it is almost certain that the decision to take homelessness services in-house will result both in the closure of the Prevent Street Day Centre and in the closure of the charity. And that is most likely to happen before the end of this calendar year. And also, the Prevent Centre will probably have to close before then. There are problems with this, and I've written to all the councillors and to the mayor to express our most grave concerns as trustees about this matter. The proposals will, as I say, almost certainly have a ruinous effect on the charity and on the Prevent Centre. And as I say, it is most likely we're going to try and get around it, but it's most likely that they are going to have to close. And this is because we have not got the opportunity to bid for the contracts, excluding Rogers Court, of course, which goes to impact at the end of this month. But the contracts will come to an end in September, and we've agreed with the council to accept extensions to the contracts. They were initially to come to an end at the end of March of last year. We accepted an extension for a year. There was considerable opposition on the Board of Trustees to doing that, because it was felt by some of them that we should hold out for a permanent contract or for an X number of years contract. But I took the view that it was our responsibility to help the council, and I argued successfully at the Board of Trustees that we should accept the extension. The council then came back to us asking for yet further extensions, and again we agreed to that. That was during my time as chair. The extensions were for 6 months, with the exception of Rogers Court, which was for 3 months. Rogers Court goes to impact at the end of this month, and as trustees of the charity, we wish them all the best with that. We of course understood that there was no guarantee, either formally or informally, that these services would be put out to tender. We were rather hoping they would be. We were rather hoping we would have the opportunity to bid for them. The Prevent Centre, as you know, provides a vital service for local homeless people, and its quality is second to none. If I were not proud of the work of the charity and of the work of the Prevent Centre, I would not waste my time by being Chair of Trustees. It's highly regarded locally, and the quality of our staff's work, including the absolutely crucial caseworking that our staff undertake with individual clients, is second to none. The reason why, come on, turn around. Try again. The reason why the council's decision is almost certain to have the consequence of imminent closure, and I'm very sorry, but I'm afraid I can see no evidence that the effect on us as a charity has been considered in these proposals, is that the cost of Prevent Street is to some extent ameliorated by the monies we receive from current contracts. There is no question of our taking money from these contracts to spend it on ourselves. I received an email from the Mayor's office, which, if my reading of it is correct, seems to imply that that's what we were doing. We totally reject any such accusation, and it is not the case. There is no question of our using money ring-fenced by the council for contracted services to Prevent Street without any agreement. Now, at present, the council pays 40% of our CEO's salary. They pay all the salaries of our head of operations and of one of our middle managers. We need to retain all three of those those members of staff. But if we're not receiving the subsidy from the council anymore, and we knew this might happen, but if we're not receiving the subsidy from the council anymore, the effect of the council's proposal to take the services in-house is that we will have to find all the money for those salaries ourselves. Prevent Street is funded entirely by fundraising. As a fundraising specialist, I know, as a fundraising specialist, that the current climate, because of the state of the economy, and it's going to get worse, the current climate is such that fundraising now is extremely difficult. We also had a very difficult year last year. We estimate, I'm meeting with the CEO tomorrow, and we will try and come up with some more proposals and ideas, but I'm doubtful. We estimate that the withdrawal of the contracts, or the possibility, the fact that we're not now going to be able to bid for these contracts, your cuts are going to become ours. It will add to us between 115, we estimate, and £120,000 to our already very high fundraising target, bringing it from around £360,000 to around £475,000, nearly £500,000. That's a lot of bring and buy sales. Fundraising in the present economic climate is very difficult then. Looking at the figures then, the trustees' assessment before we knew that this proposal was going through was that while there was some risk, that the risk remained acceptable for being able to raise our original target of £360,000. We've done huge amounts of work, and I've done huge amounts of work as chair to professionalise the way that the charity is run, and especially to professionalise the way that fundraising is run. We have applied for a great many grants, but very large grants of £50,000 and £100,000 or more, going on for more than 1 year and going on into the future. A charity of our size also should be bringing in around 20% or more from regular gifts. And we have a scheme in place, a campaign in place, to try and increase the number of regular gifts from the members of the public. Most of our money comes from grants, from other grant awarding bodies. We cannot raise the extra money that this proposal will cause us to incur. We cannot raise that from the community, and we do not have time to raise it from the further grant awarders. I've nearly finished, don't worry. Oh dear. I'm afraid that I have a very real concern that the speed at which this has proceeded has been absolutely breakneck. My understanding as chair is that one of the reasons for agreeing to the extension of these contracts was to give the council time to come up with proposals. Last Tuesday, we were told, and I think my timing right, forgive me if I've got it wrong. Last Tuesday, we were told that the following Tuesday, there would be a meeting held with Anna and with Jen in which 2p for staff would be discussed. We had a week. I did not have time to call a meeting of trustees, and trustees have not been able to consider these proposals properly. I have, however, been able to be informally in touch through email and telephone conversations with members of the trustees, but we could not call a meeting of, excuse me, we could not call a meeting of trustees in so short a time frame. There's been a huge amount of time for a decision to have been made, 18 months, a year, I don't know. There's been a huge amount of time for a decision to be made, and frankly, the trustees are bewildered at the urgency at which the current decision has proceeded. We have not been consulted. Our expert advice as a charity has not been sought, and I'm afraid no consideration, as far as I can tell, has been given to the possible effect of the charity of these proposals. Indeed, if I read the proposals rightly, it's assumed that the council will continue to have the support of charity in delivering the services. And I'm afraid I have to tell the committee, with the deepest and most sincere regret, and in something personally approaching a state of abject despair, that we will probably no longer be there for you. The decision that this committee is going to make will probably have the effect of closing the charity and of closing the Freeland Centre. We shall, of course, explore all the possible outcomes to all the possible options to avoid closure. But I'm meeting with my CEO tomorrow to discuss those options, but we, I'm afraid, are very unlikely to come up with anything else that will stave off closure. We no longer have sufficient reserves to cover the loss that the charity will probably experience. As with all charities are constantly short of money. All charities are constantly at risk of closure if they can't raise the money. But to increase by over £100,000 with a week's notice our fundraising target for this financial year, well, if you know how it can be done, I'd be very grateful to get your advice, but I can't see that we can do it. So please, question 1. Was the council aware that the consequence of its decisions would be the probable closure of Smart and of the Prebend Centre? And if not, why not? And if not, can due consideration now be given to this in reconsidering these plans? Second part of the question, is there any possibility of this decisions being changed in any way to ensure the survival of a highly respected local charity and a highly popular and successful day centre in Prebend Street? And the third part of the question, if the council goes ahead with this decision, and I understand the need to save money, and I understand the need for cost effectiveness, and I understand the problems that the council has with its budget, but your cuts are going to become ours, is there any help that the charity can give to stave off closure? And I'm afraid that that help will have to be substantial. And finally, are you willing, either as a group or individually, to meet with me and or the CEO to discuss these matters further? Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Simon, for all the information that you shared prior to your questions. I believe members have received the email from Simon already, and hopefully have had a bit of information where we've tried to explain the situation. So I'm going to pass it over to officers, but what I will say again, from not being in this job for very long, is that my understanding is that this is part of the legal procurement process for ensuring that we have best value to look after taxpayers' money. But the conversations did start with Smart in November 24, and they have been regular meetings ever since then. But what I will do is I will pass it over. I'm not sure if Anna or John. Anna, thank you.
Before you do that, Chair,
Yes.
could I ask Simon a question?
Please do.
Yes.
Response to his plea. Simon, thanks for your email. Unfortunately, I was out of the country last week, so I got it this week. It was great. And it's kind of a bridge question because it's also to officers. Are you aware of the new national strategy about a national plan to end homelessness, which was published in December 2020?
I'm aware of it.
Have we paid all that information to the charities that we're looking to rearrange in the new procurement process?
Yes.
Okay, fine, thank you. I just need to.
Okay, thank you.
Firstly, I'd just like to say thank you.
Hello.
Hello, thank you for coming. I know we spent a long time talking on yesterday at a meeting. I would like to reiterate that as a service, we really do work very closely with the third sector, and we do recognise that we can't deliver all our home services without good relationships with partners. So it's with there's great disappointment and regret that this has caused a rift between us, having worked together very closely for a number of years, with a lot to celebrate, I'd like to add, about the work that's been done by SMART. And publicly, I'd like that noted that actually SMART have supported us through COVID with an Everyone In campaign, with the establishment of supported settings such as Rogers Court and Carris House. And this decision is in no way a reflection of a fault with the provider, and there's lots to celebrate. In terms of the first question that you raised, was the council aware of the probable closure? I can say that we've been doing this review for 18 months to 2 years and meeting on a monthly basis with the CEO of SMART, previous CEO Shirley Scotcher, and then more recently Louise Ritchie. I would like it noted though that the mention of a current officer's involvement with SMART in the past, perhaps not have been said in this context, but that aside, we've been meeting monthly to discuss options. There has always been the option of either retendering or bringing services in-house, and we've been aware of the risks to the charity around that, and we've had conversations about that as we've gone along. From our perspective, it's certainly not a breakneck speed decision. It's something that we've been working towards for nearly 2 years now, and the CEO has been full aware of those potential outcomes, and also that the contract ending on the 31st of September 2026 has been the official position ever since that most recent extension.
We know that, Anna.
So in that sense, there is a notice on the end of the commissioning that we're able to provide, with no guarantees beyond that, as I know you stated. But from our perspective, that means that the decision to not automatically continue funding beyond that date is there within the procurement compliance and can't be varied. We have done a number of extensions, and I'm very grateful for the partnership that enabled that period of time so that we could conduct a review and consider all options. The aim of that review was to identify the most cost-effective way of delivering service without making cuts to that service. So right from the beginning, we held a commitment that we would continue, if not strengthen and improve, rough sleeper services as best we can within the budget envelope, whilst seeking to make efficiencies. Those efficiencies are part of a much wider review of commissioned third-party spend that we're doing as part of the improvement plan, recognising the corporate position, and that reports into the improvement board. Can due consideration be given now of the charity's position? As an officer of the council, it's beyond my remit to advise or make decisions about the future of a charity. That said, it's not something that I don't care about, and it's something that if there are any formal ways that we continue to open partnership, then I would very much welcome that. And if I can signpost to potential grant funding sources, then I will, as I did yesterday. The second question, if there's any possibility of a decision review, unfortunately, it's not possible to review that decision again because of a number of reasons, one being procurement compliance. We have exhausted possibilities of extending through waiver or direct award for this particular charity, and we cannot justify that it's best value for money to retender, having done that piece of review work. And also looking at the national strategy to develop integrated services with the single cohort and to collaborate between statutory services and develop a data-led service. A number of reasons why it's a better model for us at this time to go in-house and to meet that strategy. head on. So unfortunately, it's not possible to review the decision. Your third question about whether there's any help to stave off closure. As I said, any signposting we can do towards other sources of funding, we will do. But it's not, I can't, in my role, take responsibility for the outcome of a charity. I can only make decisions on the commission services we had, which were 3 contracts to rough sleeping outreach, rough sleeping night bed support services, and the Caris House support services. So just to be clear, the council never commissioned the day centre. I don't have any oversight of the day centre provision, and can't really comment on that. It's beyond the scope of this decision. That's not to say it doesn't make me concerned, and I'm happy to have conversations and follow-up meetings, Simon, to discuss ways in which we might be able to look at day provision across the piece. Fourth question, are we willing to meet? Of course we are.
Thank you, Anna. I think I'd just like to echo Anna's thanks to SMART for all the support and working relationship that we have had with the council and all the residents and people that needed it that have benefited from that. So that is massively appreciated. But I'd also like to thank Anna and the team for all their work that they have done to look into this and come to a decision. It's not been a rushed decision, as we've heard. It's been going on for a long time. There are very strict procurement rules that we have to follow and adhere to, which are out of our hands. And I'd just like to give thanks for all the work that you have done to date. But I can see Councillor Croft has a question.
Yeah, I can't make a decision on this committee because this committee does not allow me to make a decision because I'm not part of the executive.
Right.
So I'm invited into the committee as a Liberal Democrat representative, but I can't make a decision. So I can't help you with your questions. I am disappointed because the first I knew of this was when you emailed me. I have not been told by the council that this is
I think that's the case with a number of councils.
until you sent me an email, and I responded to that email straight away.
Thank you.
I've also asked for a briefing note about why this decision has been taken, a business case. I have not yet received that briefing note or a business case about why that decision has been made. I also have my colleague in my group that has requested a briefing note and not received it either as of yesterday.
I'll just say the briefing note was issued this afternoon.
Thank you.
And I
I've not
have
read
met
it
with
yet.
those councillors this week.
We have 2 paragraphs in a report this evening about this decision. That's the first thing I've seen, apart from the email that's been sent to me this afternoon that I've not managed to read yet because I've been at work, about why this decision has been made. So I don't know. As a councillor, I don't know why this decision is made. I don't know what the business case is. I don't know what the savings are to the council. I don't know whether it's going to be an improved service for residents. And I don't know all the contracts you have as an organisation and the impact it has on the contracts you have left. For example, if you're helping with Rogers Court and you're not going to be there, then we need to find provision for Rogers Court as well, because you won't exist as an organisation.
Sorry, councillor, is that a question or
no?
It's
just I don't know all of that detail that I want to know. I've been on this housing committee pretty much since 2019. Never recall this coming to this committee. A decision to bring in rough sleeping services in-house. And this is an executive committee. So my question to the executive again is, why has this never been to this committee before the decision has even been made or even considered? And I've never been told why we're considering bringing rough sleeping services in-house. And I've been sitting on this committee since 2019. But I would ask the executive members of this committee again, why has it never come to this committee? Because it should have. This committee is here to help with decision making for the executive, but we've never had knowledge of this as a committee. Please correct me if I'm wrong. If it's been on an agenda previously and I wasn't here, and you probably can.
There are, because it's a procurement board contract review decision, and there are commercial sensitivities around that, and this is probably not the context for discussing a negotiated contract position. That's why it hasn't explicitly come to this committee. However, the June 2024 homelessness and rough sleeping strategy included review and remodelling of rough sleeping services as an action on the action plan was published. And we've had discussions in homeless partnership forums about the fact that we're undertaking a review of rough sleeping services to remodel. And we have had conversations broadly about reviewing and remodelling rough sleeping services and monitoring the outcomes. But as I said, because of commercial sensitivity, it's not been possible to bring a specific contract decision to committee in that way.
Okay, thank you for the answer. I wasn't specifically looking for the contract decision to come to this committee, but actually the strategy of, if it was in our strategy in 2024 that we were going to review it, we've reviewed it, but it's never come back to us to say this is what we're looking at doing. And then for us to decide as a committee, the executive members on this committee, to decide do they want to do that or not. And then take that decision to the mayor for him to decide with his whole executive that that's what they're going to do. That's never come back since that strategy was announced in 2024.
The mayor's never talked to us.
Okay, so I just want to give you that information. I cannot answer your questions today. I have no decision-making powers on this committee, but I am disappointed about the way I found out about it, and I know my group is as well.
Thank you.
Thank you for that. My understanding is that it's not an executive decision, it's part of the procurement process under delegated authority. But I will again play my new card. I know I'm going to do that forever, but I'm learning everything as I go along. But there will be many decisions, as we're all aware, under delegated authorities that councils will make. We've signed off the strategy, and that's where the work will go from within that. But thank you for your comments, Councillor Croft. Does anybody else have any questions or comments to add? No? Yeah, okay, lovely. Okay, yeah, no worries.
Okay, has the council considered the long-term cost of the decision against the potential cost of increased rough sleeping, reduced prevention services, or loss of specialist support provided by SMART?
So I'm going to allow Anna to answer that in the professional capacity, but I would personally hate to think that anybody would think that Office would make a decision without having looked at all the consequences, intended or unintended, as a part of the decision. But Anna, over to you.
As I said, from the outset, the review was committed to sustaining services. There was never an intention of cut. And in fact, from a customer's perspective, they won't feel a change on the ground for those 3 commissioned contracts. So the rough sleeper outreach team will still exist, but the staff would 2p across, essentially.
We haven't agreed to that.
Okay.
Yes.
So the services will continue. The resources are there to make sure that a rough sleeper outreach team would still exist and a night shelter would still exist, and support at Carrie's House will still exist.
I think, yes, please.
I was just going to say, given the consideration of bringing rough sleeping services in-house, what evidence does this executive or the council have that an in-house model would deliver stronger outcomes, better accountability, and improved value for money compared to the current commissioned arrangements?
So we've explored those elements as part of the review and the business case, and we have now produced a briefing note for members. The decision making went through internal CLT, chief exec decision, procurement board decision, and housing management decision. At the end of the day, the contracts legally come to an end at the end of September, and at that point there would have had to have been either a retender or bringing in-house, or some change to service provision in that sense. So all that's happened here is that we've decided not to commission again, but the services remain.
Okay, Councillor Whitehill.
So yeah, I don't know if it's a comment or a question, so you might have to adjust it. So obviously, if staff don't, is it too over? We're going to lose that expertise, aren't we? And the rapport they've built up with our customers and residents. So that would be a shame if that does happen. And also, if that were to happen, would the new service provide the exact copy of the outreach team now, like weekends over the winter? Has that been all in place to literally copy over?
Yeah, as I said, there was
Yeah.
a commitment from the outset that we
Yeah.
are not cutting services.
Yeah, okay.
I think that's really a clear point to make, that we're not cutting services,
Yeah.
just making sure that we have the right process and that we follow the right
Yeah.
rules and that it's value for money.
Yeah.
But I think just before we go back for any closing comments, I would like to thank, and I appreciate you haven't all seen it yet, but I would like to thank Anna and the team for the briefing note that went out to all members, because I am aware that there were questions and maybe confusion or just information wanted. So I think it was a really helpful briefing note. And thank you to yourself and the team for putting it together. Did you have anything you'd like to
I
ask?
was just going to make the comment that I appreciate Anna's comment that services will not be cut, and obviously as the chairman of trustees of the charity, I'm delighted that services are not intending to be cut, but the big cut that the Bedford will experience is that SMART will cease to exist and the Prevent Centre will cease to exist, almost certainly, unless we can find a way around it. And there are gaps in the provision of what is proposed that I think the assumption was we would be able to pick up, but it looks as though we're just not going to be able to do that. The only other thing I would say is I would reiterate, please come and talk to us as members of the committee so that we can help with this. But as I say, the trustees' next meeting is scheduled for next month, and item 1, and probably the only item on the agenda, is going to be, can we survive this? And as I said to you, the councillors in my email, it won't be the council's sole responsibility for closing Prevent and closing SMART, but it will have been the straw that broke the camel's back. Thank you very much for having me again and for your kind attention.
Thank you very much. I'm sure we're all aware, but just to clarify before we move on, that this policy process decision, whatever you want to call it, is from the 3 things of the rough sleeping outreach services, the rough sleeping night bed support, so the night shelter, and Charis House support services. It's not touching the day centre in this decision that's been made.
But that is the effect of it, councillor.
Appreciate that. Thank you. Thank you very much. Thank you for coming.
I don't think that effect has been properly considered or even thought about. I don't think it's come to anybody's mind at all. Sorry, I'll shut up.
No, thank you. Thank you very much. Thank you for coming. And there was a lot of information there, so appreciate all the time you put in and preparing that, and for coming in to see Anna and Jen earlier in the week. Much appreciated, and let's hope we can keep the communication and moving backwards and forwards together. So, members of the council, do you have any other questions on anything? Housing related, not on anything?
Just one. Anna, there's been an invitation to join the trustees or to attend a meeting with the CEO. Yes. Will you as officers take that up?
I'm very happy to come and speak to trustees. Our meetings have over the last year been with the CEO and team on the ground, so I'm very happy to meet the trustees directly.
And we'd like to talk to the councillors as well, please.
Sure. Happy to facilitate and arrange that.
I'm always happy to talk to you, Anna.
Excellent. Okay, if there are no more questions, I will close item 4 and open item 5, which are the minutes of the last meeting. So it's to confirm the minutes of the meeting of the Housing Committee held on the 11th of March, copy enclosed and previously circulated. Is everybody happy with the minutes? Recognise that there are some people that weren't at that meeting. For everybody who was at the meeting.
Yes.
Yes. Yes. Okay, amazing. Thank you very much. On to item 6, disclosure of local and/or disclosure of pecuniary interests. Members are reminded that where they have a local and/or disclosable pecuniary interest in any business of the council to be considered at this meeting, they must disclose the existence and nature of that interest at the commencement of that consideration, or when the interest becomes apparent in accordance with the council's code of conduct. Does anybody have anything that they would like to raise? Right. Okay, lovely. Thank you very much. So we will move on to item number 7, which is an update on the rough sleeping for 2025-2026 and the support services offered within our borough. Anna, thank you.
Yeah, I will take this paper as read. It was published in the last week, but just essentially to be the highlights, it just outlines some of the data that we've captured to review the numbers and the flow of rough sleepers and the take up of some of the provisions, the night shelter, the winter to do weather. Perhaps I'll hand over to Jen just to highlight some key figures. Yeah, that's not one.
As I won't go through every detail, but just some of the particular highlights. I think rough sleeping remains a challenge across the country for every local authority. And nationally, there's an increase in terms of the number of people rough sleeping. And in 2.1 includes some of the data there. Locally, however, I'd say the picture is more positive, and we do have a declining number of rough sleepers, which is excellent news. And we are seeing on average around 43 rough sleepers a month. Individuals, and some of those are returning to rough sleeping, they're not new people.
I'll just jump in with a small note on that.
Yes.
The average amount of rough sleepers that we're measuring throughout the year, yeah, we're seeing an overarching decline, but the annual rough sleeper count showed a 60-something% increase from year on year. I just wanted to clarify that in case that.
Okay. So the number of people that rough slept over the course of the whole year was 140 during 2024 to 25. And what we've seen is a bit of a shift in the number of nights people are rough sleeping. So historically, we've had quite a high flow of people coming into new to rough sleeping and rough sleeping for a short period of time, 1 to 5 nights. And what we're seeing is that there are less people rough sleeping for those that are rough sleeping after rough sleeping for a longer period of time, unfortunately. So the number has dropped, but we are seeing people rough sleeping for a longer period of time. We are looking at data in more detail in terms of some of those causes of homelessness, like Anna said in one of the questions earlier. It's trying to address some of the root causes of homelessness, which is also reflected in the national plan and some of the main aims of NHLG to look at those root causes and address those when it comes to homelessness and rough sleeping being the highest risk area of type of homelessness. We continue our proactive outreach service, as Anna said earlier. So we're not just responding to referrals, and that would continue to make sure that we're active looking at people that might be hidden or in areas that are less easy to find or we haven't had referrals for, so that we're accessing and able to support people to access support as quickly as possible. We are working through, as I'm sure many local authorities are, the national plan to end homelessness, and there's a huge amount of positive work, particularly amongst local authorities in there. And one of those areas particularly is SWEP, severe weather emergency protocol provision that continues year on year. And we have seen a decline in the last couple of years of the number of people accessing those emergency beds. So we were at a peak of about 100 and I think about 180 at one point. We've dropped down to this last year, seeing just in the 80s, so below 100 people. So that shows that we are seeing people at an early point. We know who generally our rough sleepers are. We didn't have as many new people as we've had in previous years, and that's really positive. All of those that obviously went to SWEP were engaged and did statutory homelessness assessments also. The average number of people that stayed were 85, as we said, in the winter bed spaces, and they stayed an average number of 14 nights. And some of those came into the night bed, stayed a night or two, left, and then came back again. So that can be quite transient in terms of accessing emergency accommodation. We also worked with Smart during the winter period to extend the day centre opening hours, so that there was access to day services for people, including during the weekend. The night beds were available over the night period in that day service. They make sure that people are safe during those cold winter months. We, again, as Anna said already in previous questions, we are and have been undergoing a review of the services and working through that process. And that will continue in terms of our SWEP provision and our offer also. Through the final parts of the report are a number of different charts and figures that show both national and local picture. And you can see that our number of rough sleepers during the course of a month in figure 4 is fairly stable. So we are showing a overall decline in terms of trend, but it can fluctuate quite significantly during the month. And then the last point I wanted to make really was in terms of our national count number. So we did see an increase in the national count from 14 in 2024 up to 23 in 2025. So there was an increase. But we also report through to NHCLG a monthly snapshot figure, which is taken on the last outreach night of the month, that indicates this number on the month-by-month basis. So that can mean that there's a difference in what we see in our national count versus what we see at the end of the month, because it would depend on who's out on any particular night that's found.
Thank you, Jo.
Sorry.
It's you. I hear people so bad today. Does anybody have any questions before I open this session? Councillor Rama?
Yeah, I think I've got two small ones. The report shows a growing number of individuals sleeping rough for longer periods, with over 50% now rough sleeping for more than 10 nights. What does that tell us about the effectiveness of the current pathways into stable accommodation, and where are the biggest barriers in preventing faster move-ons? And I'll also say the other one as well. The report also highlights repeated disengagement and representation within rough sleeping services, including one individual returning 21 times. Does this suggest the current commission model is too focused on crisis response rather than sustained recovery and long-term stability or stability?
We know what you mean.
Reading my own writing.
In terms of rough sleeping move on, I think it's really challenging housing and homelessness against the whole picture. I think we all know that there's a real challenge in terms of affordable housing. There's a real challenge in move on that we experience in our in-temporary accommodation and homelessness services also. And rough sleeping is no different. I guess rough sleeping is one of the elements of homelessness, although being the most risky. It does make it really challenging in terms of move on, but it links to perhaps part of your second question around some of that repeat homelessness, in that particularly in the rough sleeper space, there's a huge amount of complex needs, mental health issues, drugs and alcohol use, physical health, they're all really prevalent. So there's lots of people that are experiencing multiple needs and support needs. And that makes accessing support services and maintaining access to those support services very difficult, which can be a little bit of a chicken and egg scenario when it comes to rough sleeping. So it can be a cause and an effect. And so it's quite tricky sometimes. People can be very transient and move across the country into other local areas. So we're not able to always track where somebody is, and then they come back, and then we're trying to start almost from point one, almost all over again. So it can be just a bit of a complex picture, which then makes move on sometimes quite difficult.
I think if I could just add on the second question that you raised about, what does it say about effectiveness of service? I can speak as one service across commissioned and statutory provision. It's fair to say that we have been good at responding in a crisis. We have been reactive, and we do need to strategically move into a space where we're doing more prevention, long-term second solution work with all of our customers, not just the rough sleeper cohort. But I think that's true. I think we do need to redesign services to focus on prevention much more.
Can I add on to that again? Sorry.
Yeah.
I think historically, rough sleep initiatives funding from central government that sort of launched in 2018, when it was at really high levels of rough sleeping, were really focused on that crisis intervention. That was what they were targeted and aimed at. And certainly everything that we had and guidance around that was for crisis intervention. With the new Ending Homelessness Plan, there is a clear shift into that direction of earlier intervention and prevention. And I think our response moves in the same direction.
Okay, thank you, Councillor.
I think I can't find it now where I need it. The stats that you sent us to say that the total amount of people from supported housing that are made homeless because of perhaps antisocial behaviour. Do we have any figures from housing associations? A separate figure for reasons, it could be financial.
I've got it on silent. You can realise it.
Sorry. 5 pounds, please.
Do we keep track of I know we've got several housing associations, I'm not going on one, but from past experience, rather than present you with somebody who needs immediate help, do how do we work with these housing associations to prevent that? And if they fall through the loop, how many people is this happening to where they're in crisis before we've been able to step in and help them? Does that make sense?
Yeah. So yeah, there is some high level data that gets published on the HCOOT stats. I can send you a link to that, which shows the number of people homeless as a result of eviction from social housing.
Yeah.
But getting a little bit more breakdown about the local picture be a bit more challenging for us to get, but I'll give it a go in terms of the stats. But one thing we are doing is through the Social Housing Forum, developing eviction protocols with housing providers to get their commitment to flagging risk of homelessness much sooner, rather than turning a door at the point of eviction, so that we're starting to work together on cases to sustain tenancies earlier. So we're trying to formalise that commitment through that forum and through those partnership meetings and the early help team, which I'll talk about in the next paper. Yeah.
Thanks. Can I reply to that?
Yeah.
I thank you for that, because I've been a councillor for what, 3 and a bit years now.
Okay.
And that's the most positive bit of information moving forward, because I think we desperately need housing associations to be very honest with us and not wait till our residents are in a situation. And I do think certain housing associations haven't been fully engaging with us, and I think it's causing the council a lot of, like you say, emergency where situations where it could have been dealt with, and we could have worked with residents, councillor, Bedford officers, everybody. It could have been, we could have worked together to prevent that. And I think the more we highlight that in these committees and hold housing associations to account for their actions, but that is a positive bit of information tonight. So I'm glad that's gonna happen. And
we're doing the same with supported housing providers as well. So we've got a forum for each, and we're developing protocols across the board.
Yeah.
So that we've got that partnership in place to prevent.
Brilliant. That's really positive bit of information.
Fabulous. Thank you. Thank you for that question. Councillor Croft.
Yeah, a couple of questions. The 38% of people that weren't supported into Safe Place to Stay, is that the people that kind of come in the area, go out the area, come back to the area, and you can't keep consistent conversations with them? So we don't get to the point of being able to offer them
most of
homelessness or temporary accommodation, or they don't want it, because there are people out there that don't want it.
It's
want
both
to
of
live
those.
on the street.
Yeah, it's both of those.
It's a combination of that. Yeah?
It is.
Okay, great. We talked a lot about supported accommodation providers previously, and it appears that they're letting their tenants down, because I'm pretty shocked by the stat you've got in there that they're ending up as rough sleepers, but they have had supported accommodation previously or have it existing. So, and supported accommodation is quite lucrative for the providers, because you can get whatever you want out of housing benefit from the government. So I know it's another piece of work, but I think it is relevant, because we've had members of the public ask about supported accommodation providers, and they don't appear to be giving the support that people need, and they're ending up in our homelessness services, which is a waste of money. There's people that are placed in our area from other local authorities that are in supported accommodation that probably end up in our area after 6 months. They've got a local connection. So we've got a duty. Is there scope to do work around that supported accommodation providers and what they're not doing? Because it just appears that they're not doing what they're paid to do, and they're just fleecing the taxpayer.
Yeah, so yes, it's very much on our radar as a high priority piece of work. So we do have a supported accommodation forum which we've set up. We've only had 2 meetings so far. It's quarterly, and it's primarily targeting registered and permissioned supported accommodation providers. But we are aware that across the sector, there's a number of unregistered providers that are making money through the housing benefit system. I'm not commenting on that, but that's the dynamic. Under the new supported housing regulations coming in, there will be a new licensing regime which requires all supported housing providers to be licensed with the council and undergo inspections of property standards and support care standards. Now, I've got a working group set up to prepare and be ready for that legislation. Legislation passed, but the regulations won't be enforced until 2027. So it's quite a big chunky piece of work. At the moment, we're just trying to scope the sector and understand how many providers there are, what the level of support is, but there are some that we're aware of and are already going out to inspect them informally. But yes.
Excellent, thank you. And my final question on this report is, do we get any grant funding from the Home Office about refugees to resettle?
We do run a refugee resettlement scheme here in Bedford.
Do we get any money from the government to help us facilitate that?
Yeah, that we do get funding from the Home Office for that, but I can provide a written response in more detail.
No, that's fine. If we're getting funding, that's covers the provision of them mending up as with sleepers and us being able to find them
And we
accommodation.
also have an asylum dispersal grant.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Croft. Councillor Weir.
Well, that was going to be my question, but I'll sort it up a bit more. On 2 points that you talk about the contributing factor to homelessness because of increasing people granted refugee status, leaving home office accommodation. I think it's only a small number, I think it's about 4. But my question was going to be, what sort of indication do you get if people are coming into our area from the Home Office to say, we've released 4 people or 2 or 3 or whatever, and by the way, we've given them funding or send funding to you? How does that kind of work?
So the individuals that were found that I mentioned in the report had not been released from any refugee accommodation locally. So they'd been released from elsewhere in the country and had travelled to Bedford to come and stay here. And they did so because of word of mouth and heard that this was a good place to come. And so then arrived here. So we weren't made aware of any release of those refugees from a local.
So then, once you find out that the status is that they've been given, but then do you apply to the Home Office for funding? Or
It would fall under our refugee existing the contract under our refugee resettlement. So they were supported by our existing local contracts because they needed that support.
We can come back to you in a bit more detail on that. I'd like to go and check.
because it's something we should push in. People turning up and being turned out by the Home Office. And the speaking of the hospital.
Yeah.
We obviously got to look after them. The other thing I was going to say is the report is very detailed and clear, so thank you for that.
Thank you to Jen for helping pull together the data. Thank you.
Are there any more questions? No? Okay, lovely, thank you. So I'd just like to round up or say thank you for that report. It was very informative and actually quite interesting to see what we're doing. There is a bit of an increase going on at the moment, but we're seeing that across the country. So sadly, we're following the national trend, but that's where we are. I would like to thank the partners that you work with, and I'd also like to thank the proactive approach that your team has in dealing with this. I think it's an incredible service that you give to the people that need it most. But I would like to remind members, and if you could share it wider with your teams, that we do have the street link connection. So if you are out and about and identify a rough sleeper or someone who might be concerned about the rough sleeper, you're not obviously going to know whether they are or not, please do report it. It goes directly to our rough sleepers services within the borough and also our outreach team. So please, I think we all really, some people are, there are different reasons why people are on the streets, and I would really encourage you to report what you see, please. Thank you. So I would just like to move on to item number 8, which is the Homeless Prevention Project, a report to summarise the service strategy and aims for homeless prevention, the latest data on homeless demand and prevention activity, key actions for 2026-27 to increase homelessness.
Again, I'll take this report as already read. But to give you the headlines, we've mentioned the National Plan to End Homelessness before. The biggest emphasis in that plan is on preventing homelessness and tackling the root causes, and the financial settlement from central government reflects that, as does the outcome framework that we have to report back on. So it's all about homeless prevention. That is our biggest priority for this year. We've talked about it in Housing Committee many times before. And our local strategy also reflects that and has actions dedicated to building homeless prevention. I've included some stats which I suppose at a glance are perhaps a bit shocking, but that highlight the fact that only about 8% of our current homeless caseload is owed a prevention duty. That means that the vast majority of homeless cases that we're working with approach us as already homeless, already in crisis. In other words, we've missed that opportunity to prevent at the first point of contact we have as a service with that customer. And I think we need to turn that around very quickly. To that end, then we undertook some workshops and review to look at cases that we had. And sadly, what we identified in that review was that a number of the cases that do turn up to the housing service in crisis were already known to the council in other departments for other reasons, whether that be adults, children's assessment hub because of debt, or customer services for another reason, or welfare. So the first action we're doing, which hopefully will be a quick win, is a comms campaign across the council internally with workshops held with adults and with children. We've done some of those workshops already, which have been really, really helpful and exciting actually, to get everybody on board with identifying the risk of homelessness and their duty to refer into the service. That's the first step. But this report also highlights how we are creating an early help team, talked about in one of the question responses. And that early help team is 5 officers plus a team leader dedicated to picking up cases ahead of the statutory trigger point. In other words, customers at risk of homelessness way before the 56 days kicks in, so that we've got that capacity to work with people earlier, as well as the forums and the protocols, eviction protocols we're trying to develop with partners. The name of the game is to identify people at risk at an earlier point and then have really proactive casework. And I've highlighted in the report some of the things we can do to prevent homelessness. We have grant funding so that we can help people with arrears and financial difficulties, help people with first month's rent and deposits for houses. We can negotiate with families, we can negotiate with landlords. There's lots we can do. So it's just about identifying those cases and being proactive to help people at an earlier point.
So I'm confused because in 2018, it's a legal requirement for public sector workers to refer homelessness to local authorities. So why has that not been happening?
Well, it has been happening, but clearly not enough. The answer, it's clearly not been happening enough, or at least not been happening through the formal route enough. So one of the things we've identified in workshops for children and adults is that there is often a phone call made from officer to officer about a particular case, and they might collaborate and help a case, but that's not being formally routed through a duty to refer or captured in the statistics. So it could be that we're just not reporting it well enough, but then again, there could be cases that are not being referred that should be. I agree, it absolutely has to happen. It's a statutory duty, so that's what we're driving.
Do you still get the court lists?
Court lists? Do we get a court list, Kate? No, so that's it.
Why not?
Yes.
It comes out every 2 weeks. It has a list of about 30 cases that people are facing court action to take their properties away. That'll give you 30 cases a week.
Thank you.
Thank you very much for that suggestion. That's really helpful. I'm sure the team will take it.
Yeah,
Take it on.
unless the citizens advice are picking that up, I'll check. I'll take that away and check. If they're not, we'll definitely do that.
Does the housing benefit team tell you when somebody's housing benefit stopped?
If
Or do you get I know you get notification from DWP that their housing element is stopped and that information is given to the council. So do you use that information as well? Because that means somebody's not paying their rent.
I'll check that as well.
That will increase your prevention.
Yes.
There's lots you can do that you're not doing, which is a bit shocking. And I don't work in the sector. Well, I do work in the sector. Apologies, I do. But I work in the charity sector. I don't work in local authority.
So I think there's a piece of work with other internal departments to make sure that corporately we're all working together to prevent homelessness and identifying those opportunities.
And do you get duty to refer from local organisations like SMART or Citizens of Ice? Or they are doing that?
Yeah, and we've got a dedicated.
Not for much longer, though.
No. And they've also given you numbers on how many people they give debt advice.
We do get data back
In a
from
year.
citizens' advice.
So if you spoke to every one of those with rent arrears or mortgage arrears, you would prevent.
I think the challenge we've had, I don't want to make excuses because they're perfectly reasonable suggestion, is the capacity of the team has been working in a reactive crisis mode for a number of years. And I think it's the fact that we're able to look at this project now is an indication that the team are beginning to look up from backlogs and crisis reaction mode. And in terms of capacity, being able to work with a household ahead of 56 days has required that extra early help team. So I've got an extra 5 officers that will be able to take additional cases.
Do you have enough staff to do this? If you're not getting all of that data at the moment, what happens when you start getting that data? You'll have about 30 new referrals every week.
Well, I think you probably know from experience with me that if I find the data demonstrating volumes are greater than I've got capacity, I will make the business case if I need to increase the team.
That's the prevention side and where we work with probably voluntary sector to help with that demand. Yes, we don't have to do it ourselves.
Thank you. Thank you for all those helpful suggestions. I think Anna and the team have got some homework to do to find out. But as Anna said, it might be that the information is coming just in a different way through a different.
But I'll definitely check those. If they're not, we'll chase that data down.
Lovely. Thank you.
Courts don't tell you about eviction hearings. They don't automatically email you as a public sector duty to refer.
So we don't get it directly, but we commission a piece of work with citizens advice locally for homeless prevention work. Part of that is representation in court. So it may be that citizens advice are picking up coming through that channel, but cable check.
So
can we make a recommendation to government then that information is given by the Ministry of Justice to local authorities? People being taken to court for rent arrears, so we can prevent homelessness.
Shall we find out what's happening first? But yes, we can take that on board as a strong suggestion. But let's find out in case something's already happening. Don't want to write something, but if not, yes, there's no reason why we can't.
Because they used to send it to us at Citizens Advice in Bedford. 10 years ago.
Okay.
Every 2 weeks.
We'll check that, and it's probably just worth mentioning then that previously the legal duty was just to refer. Now the duty is to proactively collaborate across services. So actually, we really need to strengthen all of those connections in that way.
And are the housing providers telling you when they're issuing notices?
This is one of the reasons I want to have a formalised protocol. Yeah, so I want to have that formalised commitment from them to do that because I'm aware that we're getting it, but perhaps sporadically and perhaps certainly not enough. So yeah, thank you. We have been challenging housing providers.
It's shocking that people are not following the laws. It's written in legislation that they should do it.
Thank you, Councillor Croft. I think Councillor Towler has been waiting patiently.
That's right. It's something you said actually. People who fail to pay their mortgage, you get repossessed. There's not always a lump sum to go to buy another house or get a rented house. How are they on the radar? We've talked about tenants losing their house. We haven't talked about mortgagees losing their house, which is just a bigger.
Anybody at risk of homelessness can approach resistance, and on a case-by-case basis, we'll look at their circumstances and certainly provide advice and assistance, if not full GP.
So you're not going to hear about it. You're not going to hear about it until court case or someone collapses. So you're not in the front of the queue. You're having to play catch up all the way, aren't you?
I think it might be worth doing a campaign with the general public to encourage people to come forward as soon as they feel that there's risk, and just to make people aware of the help that we can actually offer.
Sorry, on that, does the mortgage company write to you when they're taking repossession? They have a duty to do so.
There has been some occasions.
They do. Yeah.
Sometimes.
It feels like quite a rare case. I'm not.
You'd be surprised. Mortgage repossessions are very low.
Oh, Councillor Weir.
What Dean said and some of the comments. We're looking at the work programme shortly. Maybe in November we can pull all these strands together and the early within our own organisation how we've actually triaged the early stuff for prevention, and then pull all the strands together about what information are we getting and how does it come through, and will that help prevention and how we can manage it. I know it's November's not that far as a board, but if that could be done, quite useful.
Yeah,
as a
happy to come back with a further report.
Thank you. We think that's the
Sorry, I'm jumping.
No, that's fine. No, thank you. Do you have any questions? No? Okay, right, amazing. I just want to just briefly comment and say that it's great to hear all the cross-department working that is going on this. I think one of the things that we've learned over the last few years is we need to do more and more cross-party working where it's not always necessarily been so. And it helps the bigger picture because overall we are one borough council. It doesn't matter really which department. Residents don't really mind which department it is. It's one borough council. So thank you very much. And I really think that idea of the campaign is a great one. I urge you to get it booked in with comms, even if you want to, but after later in the year, just so that it is on their radar and we can start doing something. But no, okay. Thank you for that suggestion. Oh, sorry,
I know you summed up. Can I just say, I don't know whether you're completely full, but talking of working within the directorates, next week is practice week for in children's services.
Yes.
And Anna and the team have offered places for people to go out with housing officers, see the work of housing officers. I know that it's limited, there's limited places. I don't know whether you're full, but I just wondered whether that might be something this committee might find useful.
Anybody on the committee?
We should look at alternative dates as well to work.
Yeah, we've got others.
Would you like them to come direct to you or to
If you could contact Kay, she's coordinating, she's got a sign up list with slots for shadowing all through practice week with children next week.
It doesn't have to be next week.
But is it,
To extend it to alternative dates. So.
Okay, all right, great suggestion. Thank you. Thank you for helping to coordinate that. So please remember, just email in. So thank you for that report. So moving on to item 9, the last item of the evening is the work programme. So to consider the committee's future work programme and to review items programmed for the next meeting of this committee as it closed. So just to explain that we sort of have a list at the top which we can add to, and then on the second page it's more allocated by meeting. So if anybody has anything that they would like to add to the list, then please either say now or email into Chanel at any stage. But I would like to look, I'd ask you to just look at the first item on the local plan. I think there might be a couple of changes that need to be made in it. Thank you. Oh, Councillor Croft, sorry.
Can I add the Renters Reform Act, because it came in on the 1st of May. We did previously discuss it before it came in, but I'd just like a report about enforcement of that Renters Reform Act and the powers that the local authority now has.
Yeah.
How many enforcement officers have we got? Where does it sit? Have we issued any fines? Etc. etc.
Fabulous. Thank you for that suggestion. Councillor Weird?
What I mentioned earlier.
Oh, the one you mentioned earlier. You've got that one? Okay. Fabulous. Does anybody have anything now that they would like to add? Oh, go on, Councillor.
How about the new Renters Act and how many lack of private rentals we're losing because of it? Or whether it's a myth or whether it's not. Because
incorporate that point within the.
Part of the renters.
it could be a bad move or a good move. I don't know.
Okay, we can tie that in together with Councillor Croft's suggestion and bring it all to the same meeting. Well, thank you for those suggestions. Like I said, if you have any suggestions that you would like to put forward to the work programme, contact Chanel. If you the team are always here. No, they're incredibly friendly and they're working really hard. But you know, if you've got any concerns or issues or things that you think you might like to see on the work programme but you don't really know, then please do always get in touch with them, Councillor Walker.
Just later on in the year, if what Simon says comes to fruition, I would like something on the agenda to know what we're going to do about vision for day-based centre vision.
Yep. Okay. We can, if we wanted, maybe we can add in an update on the process of the handling.
Yeah, the new
Okay, sure.
just so that we know.
Right. Thank you. Okay. With all of that, I would like to say thank you for you all for attending. Thank you to our guests and residents who asked questions, and of course, thank you to all our officers. And I will close the meeting. Thank you. That's okay. Is it initially?
You've got that. My drive in. Kids. Outside. Yes.
She finished now.
Yeah.
Well, you can't change it.
Yeah, little hurrah.
This is not a party person. She actually ends up leaving. She was paying and then we want to go out for a drink.
No, that's fine.
And you're in the grass again.
Are you going to be meeting with the trustees? Reach out.
We've got a very large sum of cash, but I don't think it's going to achieve anything. But you'd be very welcome.
That's fine, don't worry.
I think the next trustees meeting will probably be the last one. And I take it.
See you later.
I'm sorry if I
Yeah, that's fine.
Anything I say, anything I say.
Yeah, I know that, yeah. We've done that.
Thank you very much.
Thank you. Oh, no, you're bad. I've only had this for the last.
Yes, we're going to try.
It's Mark normally, but he's not been.
Yeah, just when I'm right, see you later.
More challenging, I think, next time. Yeah, it's safe if I'm on holiday. And the numbers are going on. Everything's come up when I'm on holiday. Maybe we have a kind of a record from.
Probably easier like that, isn't it?
Maybe.
Very bad.
Yeah. It's not anything historic. I mean, historically, the numbers.
I mean, we knew it might happen, but you know, from being told